Selena, a young black woman in her late 20s, had just wrapped up a tiring shift at work. It was a bustling Saturday evening, and the city parking area near the shopping mall was crammed with vehicles. After driving around for a while, she finally spotted an empty space close to the entrance. With a relieved sigh, she parked her car, carefully aligning it between the lines. Just as Selena reached for her bag to exit, a screech of tires startled her. A white SUV sped into the adjacent spot, stopping alarmingly close to her car. Her head snapped up to see a middle-aged white man glaring at her from the driver's seat. His flushed face and tight grip on the steering wheel radiated anger. The man rolled down his window and pointed at her sharply. "That was my spot," he barked, his voice dripping with frustration. Selena, slightly taken aback by the aggressive tone, tried to remain composed. "I'm sorry," she replied firmly but politely. "I didn't see anyone waiting." The man slammed his car door shut and strode toward her, blocking her exit. His piercing gaze and furrowed brows were filled with disdain. "Don't give me excuses," he sneered. "You people are always so entitled, pretending you don't see what's right in front of you." Selena felt her heart race. The insinuation in his words was painfully familiar. She inhaled deeply to steady herself, unwilling to let his hostility provoke her. "Look, I truly didn't see anyone waiting for the spot," she said, her tone calm but resolute. But her attempt to diffuse the tension only fueled his anger. The man crossed his arms, towering over her car. "Of course you didn't," he spat, his voice dripping with mockery. "You people never pay attention to anyone else, always acting like the world revolves around you." Selena clenched the steering wheel, her knuckles whitening. She wanted to leave, but the man's intimidating stance left her feeling trapped. Nearby shoppers began to slow down, their curious glances adding to her discomfort. Despite her growing unease, Selena kept her voice steady. "This isn't worth arguing over. Let's move on with our evening," she suggested. Her words seemed to strike a nerve. The man stepped closer, his finger jabbing toward her chest. "Who do you think you are to talk to me like that?" he snarled. "I'm sick of your kind, thinking you can do whatever you please." His harsh words stung deeply, cutting to the core of her dignity. Selena gritted her teeth, determined not to show the anger bubbling inside. She had encountered prejudice before, but this man's unprovoked hostility felt particularly venomous. Her instinct told her to de-escalate the situation, so she began to step back toward her car. But before she could move, his hand struck her face with a resounding slap. The sudden, sharp blow sent her head reeling, her cheek burning from the impact. Selena stood frozen for a moment, trying to regain her balance. Around them, murmurs rippled through the crowd as the bystanders watched in stunned silence. Without thinking, Selena's hand shot up, delivering a swift slap to his cheek in return. Her retaliation wasn't about revenge. It was an instinctive response to defend herself and reclaim her pride. The man staggered backward, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. His hand flew to his face, his expression a mixture of outrage and humiliation. "How dare you?" he bellowed, his voice seething with rage. "Who do you think you are?" Selena stood her ground, her hand still trembling from the impact. Her eyes locked with his, unwavering. "I won't let you treat me like I don't matter," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. By now, a small crowd had gathered, some pulling out their phones to record the escalating scene. The man's fury only grew as he realized he had become the center of attention. He turned away from Selena, storming back to his SUV, but not before throwing her a venomous glare. Selena took a deep breath, her body still shaking from the encounter. She decided to head into the shopping mall to regain her composure and finish her errands. But as she approached her car after gathering her essentials, her heart sank. Deep scratches marred the side of her vehicle, the deliberate handiwork of someone seeking petty revenge. Frustration and anger welled up inside her as she stared at the damage. The car wasn't new or expensive, but it was hers, a symbol of her hard work and independence. She didn't need to guess who had done it. The man's SUV was still parked nearby, its driver smirking smugly from inside. Selina's hands clenched into fists as she took out her phone to call the police. She knew reporting the incident might complicate things, but she also understood that staying silent would let him win. Her voice trembled as she explained the situation to the dispatcher, but her determination never wavered. When the officers arrived, Selina recounted every detail, from the man's initial aggression to the slap and the vandalism. She pointed to his SUV, where he remained, now feigning innocence. One officer approached the man while another examined Selina's car. As expected, the man denied everything, painting himself as the victim. "She attacked me out of nowhere," he exclaimed, his voice laced with indignation. "I was just trying to park, and she started shouting at me." Selina's frustration grew, but she forced herself to remain calm. She repeated her version of events, emphasizing how she had tried to avoid conflict. The scratches on her car stood as undeniable evidence of his malicious intent, a truth he couldn't refute. After a brief discussion between the officers, the man was placed in handcuffs and led to the police car. His protests grew louder as he hurled insults at Selina, vowing to make her pay. But for the first time that evening, she felt a glimmer of justice. Selina watched as the police car carrying Mr. Grant disappeared into the distance. Though a sense of relief washed over her, a heavy weight still pressed on her chest. She knew this wasn't the end of the ordeal. The man's hateful words and actions weren't just personal. They were a reflection of deeper societal prejudices she had encountered throughout her life. At the police station later that evening, Selina sat across from an officer, recounting the incident in full detail. She spoke clearly, making sure to include every word, every action, and every moment leading up to the slap and the subsequent damage to her car. As she wrote her statement, memories of the confrontation replayed vividly in her mind, reigniting the sting of humiliation and frustration. The officer, a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor, nodded as he read her account. "We'll also request security footage from the parking area," he said. "It may provide additional evidence to back your claims." Selina exhaled deeply, grateful for the officer's thoroughness. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady but strained. Though she felt supported, she couldn't shake the fear that Mr. Grant would twist the story to paint her as the aggressor. Days passed, and Selina received a call from the police. The security footage had been reviewed, and it confirmed her account. The video captured everything: the man's aggressive approach, the slap, and even the moment he keyed her car out of spite. For the first time since the incident, Selina felt a glimmer of hope that justice might prevail. The following week, Selina was asked to appear at the station again, this time to finalize her case. As she sat in a small meeting room, waiting for the next steps, her thoughts drifted to the incident. She recalled the pain of being slapped, the sting of the man's hateful words, and the humiliation of being reduced to a stereotype in his eyes. When Mr. Grant was brought into the same room, his hands cuffed and his face red with anger, Selina's resolve only grew stronger. He shouted at her, hurling insults and accusing her of setting him up. But Selina remained calm, her gaze unwavering. She refused to let his venomous words shake her. The officers quickly silenced him, emphasizing that his behavior was unacceptable and that his actions were under investigation. The legal proceedings against Mr. Grant moved swiftly, thanks to the damning evidence captured on the security footage. Selina's lawyer, Ava Carter, was a sharp and determined advocate who wasted no time building a strong case. Ava reassured Selina that the evidence was solid, but Selina still felt the weight of uncertainty pressing on her. During the trial, the footage played for the court, showing Mr. Grant's blatant aggression and his deliberate act of vandalism. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as the jury watched the man slap Selina without provocation. Mr. Grant's lawyer attempted to frame the incident as a moment of emotional instability, claiming he had been under significant stress that day. But the jury seemed unconvinced. When it was Selina's turn to testify, she took the stand with quiet determination. She described the incident with clarity, ensuring every detail was heard. "This wasn't just about a parking spot," she said firmly. "It was about him seeing me as less than him, simply because of who I am." Her testimony was powerful, and Ava's closing arguments drove the point home. "What we have here is not a misunderstanding or a bad day," Ava said, addressing the jury. "It's a deliberate act of hostility fueled by prejudice. Selena deserves justice, not just for the physical assault, but for the attack on her dignity." After what felt like an eternity, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty on charges of assault and property damage. Selena exhaled, her heart pounding with a mix of relief and exhaustion. Justice had been served, but the scars of the incident remained fresh. As she left the courthouse, a woman approached her, taking her hand. "You're incredibly brave," the woman said softly. "What you did will inspire others to stand up too." Selena smiled, a faint but genuine smile. Though she knew this was just one battle in a larger fight against prejudice, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her voice had been heard, and she hoped it would encourage others to speak out as well.